Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 10 stunning recordings of non-standard repertoire. And today we're talking about the label Ondine. Here's a stack of Ondines. See, you can always tell they have an identifiable blue spine, which is awfully handy in locating their recordings in your collection. I like that. That's smart brand management. That's one way you know that you're getting a decent product, or at least a recognizable product. I mean, that's the first hurdle we have to get over, isn't it? I mean, Ondine was founded by Raekallio, a very, very smart cookie in the record business, and he's still there, still running the show, which is a wonderful thing. It was like Bis with Robert von Bahr, or Ted Perry and Hyperion, or Brian Cousins and Chandos. I mean, it always helps to have a single guiding vision and guiding intelligence at the helm over the long term, to look over your catalog, to make sure that your product is up to snuff, that the productions fit in with your vision of the label. I mean, these are the kinds of things that independent labels offer us that major labels used to have when they had, important producers like, Walter Legg at EMI, or John Colshaw at Decca, or some of these people who were really on top of things, but they don't anymore because they are a random mishmash of incoherent musical gibberish. So we're trying to de-gibberize things a little bit, and I've got 10 amazing Ondine recordings here, including a lot of Finnish music, naturally, which is one of the great happenings of the second half of the 20th century. It's really fascinating because every country, it seems, has its sort of cultural awakening. We heard, we talk about, for example, the British school in the first half primarily of the 20th century, because England had been dormant for most of the 19th century, except for Sir Arthur Sullivan, a couple other people. But then Elgar happened, and after that, the whole world opened up, and you had Holst and Vaughan Williams and Bax and Britten and Tippett and all of those people. And they're wonderful. You had a great, great explosion of musical creativity. And the same thing happened in Finland. It happened, first of all, you had Sibelius, who was sort of like the Elgar of Finland, although he's a much greater composer than Elgar was. And you have, after that, this raft of composers. And things really got going in the second half of the 20th century, but there were quite a few excellent ones in the first half as well. And because of that, because of Sibelius, Finland's musical infrastructure developed very, very rapidly over the course of the 20th century. And you have fleets of fabulous conductors. We all know who they are. And we have amazing composers. Just amazing composers, lots of them. And they're getting recorded because you now have excellent orchestras, and you have a record label like Ondine who will promote these amazing musicians, performers, everything. Finland is a powerhouse of musical creativity in the second half of the 20th century and into the 21st. So, without further ado, let's have a look at some rare repertoire and some not-so-rare repertoire, because Ondine also does fabulous not-so-rare repertoire. You remember my recent video of the Dvorak trios with Tetzlaff and friends, and they're just, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So there's a lot of other good stuff on the label, but I really, really am excited to present to you, here we go, Madetoja, who I've talked about before. He was one of the early post-Sibelian masters. He wrote 3 symphonies. This is the disc with his tone poem Kullervo, which of course Sibelius turned into a giant choral symphony. And the Symphony No. 2, which is an unbelievably beautiful romantic work a gorgeous romantic work from the early decades of the 20th century, and his elegy. It's just a wonderful, wonderful disc. And the first and third symphonies are also available as part of this series. So Madetoja is somebody you definitely need to hear. And you can hear some of if you watch the other videos I've done where I talk about him, you can hear some samples. And I just hope you love it. It's beautiful, beautiful music. So Madetoja is number one. Now here's an interesting guy. Raitio. However I pronounce that. Here he is, Raitio. Now, Raitio, what are his dates? His dates were 1891 to 1945. He didn't live to be that old. He began life as sort of an avant-garde composer, not an atonalist, but more of a sort of, well, what do you want to say? Avant-garde composer, more like Scriabin-esque. Maybe that's the word, because, Finland had that still does, has that close proximity to Russia and to the latest trends in Russian music, and Scriabin was the avant-garde thing. And so Raitio began life as a hotshot avant-gardist, and here's a disc of his more unusual works, the Fantasia Poetica. This is from the early period. And Fantasia Ecstatica, that's Scriabin-esque, right? And then the Swans, the Column Fountain, and Antigone, and these are beautiful works. And in that style, in that highly dense, chromatic, interesting style, it's fun to listen to. Then he became sort of a miniaturist. He loosened up. He was kind of like Oskar Kokoschka. He started out, going and you're trying to, alarm everybody. But then he wound up being fairly harmless, but still extremely enjoyable. And here's a lovely disc. It's called The Queen of the Flowers, Works for Small Orchestra. It has an absolutely marvelous piece, a little tone poem here called Maidens on the Headlands, which is beautiful. And summer pictures from someplace you've never heard of, Hamme or something like that. And there's a waltz and an idyll and a tango. And he's delightful. Raitio is one of those composers you will really enjoy listening to. You get a couple discs, you've got basically the whole shebangy, and you will be very happy that you did. So Raitio is great to hear. And there's that great Finnish composer, John Corigliano. No, I'm just kidding. But actually, Ondine has done fantastic recordings of contemporary American composers as well. Some really first-rate stuff. This is with the Tampere Philharmonic Orchestra under Eric Klaas. And it's really, really good. You get Phantasmagoria. I love Phantasmagoria. It's from the Ghosts of Versailles. And it's sort of a suite. And then a piece called Two Music. And the Fantasia on an ostinato. The ostinato being the slow movement from Beethoven's Seventh. That was a competition piece that Corigliano wrote, which he later orchestrated. Originally, I think it was for piano. And then you have the Three Hallucinations from Altered States, that great film score. Oh, gosh, I love that piece. This is fantastic music. It's wonderfully well played, beautifully recorded, and very, very exciting. And since American labels and American orchestras don't seem to give a damn about American music, it's awfully nice to see quality independent labels taking up the charge. Thank you, thank you, thank you. After that, let's see. Uno Klami. Now, again, I've done a talk about Uno Klami, especially his two big suites. They're called Sea Pictures, and, of course, most famously, the Kalevala suite. These are big, bold, colorful, romantic pieces based or strongly influenced by French music. Klami was Finnish music could sort of go one of two ways. It's like, the road not taken, right? It was either, three ways. Let's make it three. There's one in the middle. It could be Russianish, it could be Germanish, or it could be Frenchish. And Klami was a Frenchish. He was definitely a Frenchish. In fact, the last of the Sea Pictures sounds an awful lot like Bolero played sideways. There's a lot of heavily French influence in this music, but this disc doesn't contain either of those works. Ondine has his 2 symphonies, which are lovely pieces, and you also get, this is a bunch of tone poems and other works, The Adventures of Lemminkainen on the Island of Sari, probably the piece that's been recorded most by him. It's a really fun tone poem based on the same story as Sibelius, the first of his Lemminkainen legends, Lemminkainen and the Maidens of Sari, or whatever you want to call it. But this is a much more rambunctious version of the same story, and it's like all of Klami, fabulously orchestrated. Then you get the Cobblers on the Heath overture, which in Finnish is Numisutarit Alkosoito. Yeah, sure, whatever, who knows. And then the Karelian Rhapsody and the Karelian Marketplace. These are just big, bold, colorful works. They're wonderful. And finally, In the Belly of Vipunen for baritone, male chorus, and orchestra. A wonderful selection of totally unknown pieces by Uno Klami. Get to know it. Oh, who's doing this? The Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra with Sakari Oramo. Now let's do a little normal repertoire. Yeah, quasi-normal. The complete Prokofiev sonatas with Matti Raekallio. Now, Matti Raekallio is a wonderful pianist, and this is one of the earliest series of recordings I think that Ondine did. It's fairly aged, but this is one of it may be the best Prokofiev piano sonata cycle out there. It's absolutely first rate. It's beautifully recorded, fabulously played. Raekallio has the fire and the steel in his tone, especially in the war sonatas. And there really aren't that many Prokofiev piano sonata cycles around. Really great ones. We don't usually treat those sonatas as a cycle. We look at individual pianists who did individual works, like Richter, who was the dedicatee of some of the wartime sonatas, or a couple by Ashkenazi and whatnot. And well, you should have them all. They're wonderful. You also get on CD4 here, it's 4 discs, the Vision Fugitive and Tales of an Old Grandmother, and 10 pieces from Romeo and Juliet. Really a fantastic collection of Prokofiev piano music, and it's not one that you would be paying any attention to normally, because Raekallio is not a household word, and he is really first class. I love this set. I really do. It's just wonderful. So if you're looking for some great Prokofiev piano sonatas, think Ondine, and there you go. Oh, here's another one that I just love. Ernest Pingoud. I think this is probably no longer available in hard copy. I wish it would be. Pingoud was the real Scriabin-esque turn-of-the-century sort of crazy guy, Finnish crazy guy composer. His dates are 1887 to 1942, and this contains Le Prophète and Chanticleer, yep, and Flambeau Éteint, extinguished torches. See where it's going? It's wonderful. Fetish, Le Fétiche, the French titles. It's all Scriabin-esque. And Le Chant d'Espace, the Song of Space. The music is just endless fun. So if you can get your hands on this or on a download of it, you're going to want to hear Pingoud. He was really, really different. And a little, like Scriabin himself, maybe a byway in the history of Finnish music or music more generally. But oh, what a fun little scenic detour. You go to the overlook and, enjoy the vista. It's so much fun. So Pingoud was one of those rare composers that now that you know who he is, you can make yourself crazy with the dearth of available recordings of his music. And after Pingoud, Christopher Rouse, the late Christopher Rouse, fabulous composer. And this particular disc is wonderful. It's with the Helsinki Philharmonic, Leif Segerstam, and Evelyn Glennie, and Cho Lang Lin, violin. You get his percussion concerto, which is actually a fantasy for solo percussion and orchestra, called Der Gerettete Alberich. It's based on some story from Alberich, from The Ring. So you've got a few little quotations and things there. And, basically him unchained or chained Alberich. It's got rattling and percussive noises, and it's lots of fun. And then Rapture, which is one of his, most popular pieces, to the extent that Rouse wrote any popular pieces. And finally, the Violin Concerto. Lovely, lovely work. Beautiful stuff. Wonderfully played by Cho Lang Lin, who is, of course, a wonderful artist who we haven't heard much of lately. So there you go. Another fantastic disc of American music on Ondine. 20th century music. I mean, Ondine really finds good contemporary music to do. They really do. It's a wonderful catalog. You can trust them completely when it comes to that. And speaking of which, oh yeah, Magnus Lindberg. Now, Magnus Lindberg is a major, major, major voice. I mean, he is a seriously great living composer, late 20th, early 21st century. And this has the disc, the work that I really first encountered. It's the second recording of it, KRAFT, Strength, Force. KRAFT was one of his early works. Like so many composers, he began as a sort of avant-garde, crazy guy, and slowly developed a more tonal, audience-friendly idiom, which is sort of where he is now, but without compromising his artistic beliefs or his individual voice. None of that. It really doesn't. Just because something is listenable, that doesn't mean it has to be dumbed down. And his music is never dumbed down. So you have his piano concerto, which is just wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and KRAFT. KRAFT is a big sound, texture, noise. I mean, like the word suggests, it hits you in your face. I first encountered KRAFT, in the 80s. I guess it was the mid-80s when I was working for High Fidelity and writing for High Fidelity, and it won the International Record Critics Awards, IRCA. And I was helping the then editor, Ted Libby, put together the IRCA Awards nominees and people, and this was the Contemporary Music Award. And Lindberg was completely unknown to me then, and boy, is this a voice. That was a good pick, as it turned out. Because, how many of these prize winners, do you remember that and they turn out to be nothing? Nothing comes of it. They get a prize, and then you never hear about them again. But Lindberg was really, really good. He's a wonderful composer. And so, the piano concerto and KRAFT, two sides of his style. You may not like them both equally, but you have to concede that this is a guy who knows what he wants and how to do it. And his music is fabulous, and Ondine has been following it throughout his career. There are 4 or 5 discs of his music on Ondine, and they are spectacular. So Magnus Lindberg. Oh yeah, Aulis Sallinen. Now, Sallinen has really had an international reputation as a result of his operas, which really put the Finnish national opera on the map. Those were The Horseman and The Red Line. And he wrote quite a few operas after that. He's still around. He was born in 1935. I don't know if he's doing much composing anymore. He's another composer who was more French-oriented. In fact, I think he lives in France, actually. And this disc contains 2 fantastic works. The Songs of Life and Death, Opus 69, which is a big work, 46 minutes, amazing piece of music, sort of in the, Das Lied von der Erde, long song, symphony type thing mode. It's absolutely fabulous. And the Iron Age Suite, which is incredible fun. It's a suite. I think it comes from a film score, but the music is absolutely wonderful. And this is with Jorma Hönninen, baritone, the great Finnish baritone, with the Opera Festival Chorus, the Helsinki Philharmonic under Aku Kamu. And boy, oh boy, do you need to hear this. If you like really good contemporary vocal music, and then the Iron Age Suite, which is just fun, and unbelievable, fun, colorful music. Sallinen is a composer who you really ought to know, and he's on many labels now. BIS has a bunch of fine Sallinen recordings, and all of the symphonies are on CPO, another label we will be talking about in this series quite shortly, hopefully. So, this is great stuff. And Ondine recorded some of his operas, Kullervo and some other works. And I've talked about Shadows, a work of his based on the opera The King Goes Forth to France, which is absolutely a brilliant orchestral work. That was one of my mystery titles, which a bunch of you got instantly. Then I realized that not only do you just know it, which I take nothing away from you for knowing it, but there's some app out there that you play a little music in it and it tells you exactly what the piece is from any recording ever made since the dawn of time. Boy, does that take the fun out of this stuff, doesn't it? So anyway, Sallinen, the Iron Age, and the Songs of Life and Death. What a cool disc. Go for it. And last but not least, however, no discussion of Ondine would be complete without talking about Rautavaara. This was the composer with whom Ondine formed the strongest relationship of its discographic career. It has recorded all of his major works, or almost all of them, and really in wonderful performances, some of them more than once. This is a box that contains all of Rautavaara's concertos. We will talk about his symphonies. We will do other videos about Rautavaara. I've already done one of Cantus Arcticus, the concerto for birds and orchestra, which is in here, right? It better be. Let me see. Yeah. No. It's not in here. Yes, it is. Of course it is. There it is. Had to be. One of the great works of the 20th century. And Rautavaara's concerti are less well known, and they're quite splendid, especially the three piano concertos, which go from more of a spiky Prokofiev Shostakovich style to his third piano concerto that he wrote for Ashkenazi, which is completely dreamy and wonderful, and in that late, somewhat mysterious, spiritually charged style of his maturity. But you get a violin concerto, a cello concerto, and a double bass concerto, subtitled Angel of Dusk. Ooh. And then you've got the ballad for harp and strings, his harp concerto, and the Cantus Arcticus concerto for taped birds and orchestra. Then there's a wonderful flute concerto, Dances with Winds, clarinet concerto, and his organ concerto, Annunciations, which is very scary. Ooh, boy. It makes a terrifying sound. And then the three piano concertos. This is just a terrific box. 4 discs and fantastically played with wonderful soloists. The violin soloist is Elmar Oliveira. Remember him? Some of these people, they're still out there and still making fine recordings. And I think that Ondine's work with Rautavaara shows what you can do when you have a wonderful composer and a fabulous label, and the ability to actually follow an entire career. I mean, what a special thing that is. What an important thing that is. And I think it's one of those, I salute Ondine for having done that. It's just incomparably wonderful. It really is. So, there you go. Ondine, an amazing label. All of these works, I wrote down the titles down below so you can see what they are and you don't have to make yourself nuts trying to think what I tried to pronounce or what they are. And I urge you to go and listen. Keep on listening. Give them a shot. You're going to love this stuff. You really are. It's just fabulous. As I say in the title of the series, 10 stunning non-standard repertoire recordings by a fabulous label that you really ought to know. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.